Well, good afternoon, Chad.
Good afternoon to you.
I'm here to sort of pick your brain a little bit about yourself, your career, and specifically about the prom.
Great.
I'd love to hear just a little bit about yourself, like how you got started in this business, where were you educated, that kind of thing.
It's funny. I grew up in a very small town in Illinois, Centralia, Illinois, and when I was about 7 or 8, my parents took me to a community theater production of Oliver, and I had never been to a live performance before, and I was immediately in love. And I was like, what is this place where people sing and dance and wear costumes and there's an orchestra? And I was like, I want to do that. I want to be part of that. So I was always, since that moment, sort of fascinated with musical theater. And so I sort of, I went to summer theater camps and did community theater and did shows in high school. And eventually I made my way to NYU. And originally I was going to do drama, and I just by chance took a random course in dramatic writing. And it was just an elective, and my professor, he was a TA at the time, said, you should be doing this. And it turns out that TA is Doug Wright, Pulitzer Prize winner, and Tony Award winner. But I took his advice, and I ended up getting a double major in drama and dramatic writing. I stayed on for another year to get my master's. And then I did what all writers do. I, bartended and answered phones and sent out scripts. And so it was, it's sort of the classic, climb your way slowly, rung by rung, and get a reading here, get a production there. So it was a sort of that moment when I was 7 or 8, where I saw that show, which I think is so amazing about any place like this that does live theater, to inspire everyone from young kids to adults to experience the magic of theater.
Yeah. How did you get involved with the prom? Where did this project come from?
The prom was a very unusual sort of trajectory. Usually what happens is, for example, for Aladdin, Disney calls my agent and they say, would Chad want to write Aladdin? And of course the answer is yes. But for this, a guy had an idea. He had read about all of these same-sex couples being banned from their proms, and he had the idea of layering on top of that the sort of joke of actors trying to be activists to get more press. And he sort of came up with the idea first, and then he went to our director, Casey Nicola, who was working at that time at Encores. And at Encores, they do, sort of forgotten musicals. And he was doing a show there. And he said, listen, I have this idea. I don't want to write it. I want you to direct it, and who do you think should write it? And we had just worked with Casey on Elf the Musical.
Okay.
And it was Bob Martin, known as, famous for Man in the Chair, and Matthew Sklar, who I wrote The Wedding Singer and Elf with. And we were just presented with the idea. And we said, this is amazing, great, and we took it from there. So it's very unusual that somebody will come up with an idea, and it's even more unusual that it'll be a really good idea, where you go, oh yeah, we got that. So that's sort of how it all happened.
And this is based on a true story?
It's based on several true stories. And at first, it sort of was came to our attention because of one story, and then unfortunately, we kept finding or being sent more and more instances where this had happened, with same-sex couples being banned or forbidden. And so that part is real and true, and we wanted to honor that. And then, of course, the Broadway divas are completely over-the-top clowns, which we have more fun with. So there's a part of the story that's very true and very heartfelt and very real, and then there's, of course, the over-the-top comedy of the Broadway people.
Yeah, the crazy chaos that they ensue.
Exactly.
So what feelings did you experience the first time you watched this particular musical?
The sort of surprise of the musical, we always thought of it as just a comedy, and we knew it had a message, But what was sort of surprising and shocking, especially after we did, most Broadway shows do an out of town where you take the show to a regional and test it out, and then you fix it for Broadway, and depending on the reviews and the audience response. So when we went to Atlanta, we thought, oh, this is just a funny comedy and that's it. But then after the show, we would have teenagers come up to us and say, this show is going to help me come out to my parents. This show, I feel like it's the first time I've seen myself on stage. And so it really sort of surprised us because we didn't realize how much of a message it had and how much that would really affect people. We thought it was just like this funny, ha ha ha, silly comedy. So that was the biggest surprise. And I think from Atlanta to Broadway, we really tried to lean into that and make that, more sort of forward in the storytelling.
So, how do you feel about the impact that the Prom has had on the LGBTQ community?
I mean, we're thrilled. I mean, we still, get messages through social media when the tour was happening, when the film happened, and again, it's something that we never saw coming, and I guess we were, dumb in that sense that we were thinking, oh, it's just a silly comedy. So it's been really emotional and sort of very, very heartwarming to think that, this is something that might comfort someone somewhere.
Do you personally identify with the story, and if so, how?
Oh, definitely. I think all of us, everybody on the creative team brings their own, stories to it. When we were writing the character of Barry and we were talking about his prom, and I didn't go to my prom, but I was going to go. And at the time I was wearing blue contacts, and everything he describes about his turquoise tux and the silver, all of that is real. So there are definitely, parts of all of us in that story, or in different characters.
Sure.
So it's funny, the more specific and true you get, the sort of more bizarre and funny it gets.
How were you approached to write the Netflix film version?
Well, that's a crazy story. We had no idea that Brian Murphy was interested, that Netflix was interested. We had no clue. And we started noticing these huge stars showing up. Like tonight, Nicole Kidman's in the audience and Meryl Streep is in the audience. Like, what is going on? And we just thought, okay, whatever, I guess they heard about it. And then we were contacted through the producers, through Ryan's people, that he wanted to make a movie of the musical, and he wanted these people in it. And we were completely shocked. It was completely out of left field. And so, it's very rare in, any writer's lifetime that, would it be okay if Meryl played a part in a movie that you wrote? You're like, oh yeah, that'd be fine. So it was a great experience, and everybody was lovely, and it was very, very surreal. There was a moment when we went on set, when they were doing the opening number, and we went to meet all the actors, and Meryl Streep asked me a question, and she put her hand on my arm, and I blanked out, because I was like, Meryl Streep is touching me. And I was like, say that again? And I had to have her repeat what she said, because I was like, what is going on right now? So it was one of those, dream come true, pinch me moments.
Oh my gosh, I bet.
Yeah.
What do you suppose the biggest challenge was in writing both the musical and the Netflix movie?
Well, the real challenge, and we really found this out from Atlanta to Broadway, was to make sure that we didn't make anyone a villain, and that we didn't, sort of portray any of the characters through our own political lens. And when we were in Atlanta, one of the biggest changes that happened, and I have to credit our director, Casey Nicola, he said, I feel like we started in musical theater world, and then we go to a town that's a musical theater town. It's not real. And so we had to decide, how do we make that real? How do we make it a real town? How do we make it And how do we not make, for example, Mrs. Green a villain? How do we understand why she's doing what she's doing? We might not agree with it, but we wanted to make sure that, you know, A, it was a real town, and B, we understand the motivations of these people so that we aren't sort of forcing a political view on an audience. And I think that was the real balancing act. And the second thing that was really a balancing act was trying to make sure that anytime we got too sort of on message or on point or too syrupy, that we undercut it with a joke or that we undercut it with comedy, so that it never felt like, you know, an after-school special or you know, a message piece. So those are the two big things that we struggled with and tried to keep checking in on.
Yeah. I mean, just in directing it and having not had this conversation, I had a very similar conversation with our cast, especially when it came to that Mrs. Green's character is not a character to be bashed or mocked.
Right.
And we really definitely tried to humanize her. In a way, humanizer is a bad term, but to show the other side and to try and to understand the other side. So, and that particular was something that we worked on a lot, because it's like one character versus the rest of the characters.
Right.
You know, I mean, ultimately, you know,
absolutely.
they all come on board by the end, right? They all make this arc.
Right.
What hopes did you have for the LGBT community writing the Netflix movie?
I mean, this might be Ryan's hope, but it was my hope as well. But when he, you know, originally was pitching us on doing the movie, which of course we were immediately sold. We're not going to say no. But he said, what I want from this movie is I want this movie to be available in Russia. And it will be. And they can't stop this movie from being shown in these places where homosexuality is criminalized.
Right.
I want kids to see this that are struggling, that are suicidal, that are afraid, that feel that they're bad.
Right.
I want them all to see this and feel seen and know that there's a world out there where they belong. And one of the sort of most gratifying moments through that whole rollout of the film was #1 in Russia for a week, which it blew everyone's mind. And I don't know if it was because of the starry cast. They might not have known the storyline. I don't know, but it's wonderful, because I have to think, I know that there are people in a place, a very dark place,
Sure,
getting just at least some hope, some you know, message of it's okay, you're okay. And, you know, to use the phrase that we use all the time, that's almost cliche, but it does get better, it can get better. So that was a biggie, because that was Ryan's hope, and it came true. So it was really great.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I did not know that about.
We were shocked, but
Wow.
happily shocked.
What does inclusivity mean to you?
I think inclusivity is, it's not only just understanding and listening to everyone else's experiences, but also understanding that you can never truly understand, that we all come from different places. So it's sort of, I love when somebody can say, I didn't have that experience, but I understand what you're talking about. I used to be one of those people that would say, like, oh, I know what you mean, because I've been through this. And that to me has changed. I've changed my point of view about that. It's now, I think, in my mind, just personally, inclusivity means tell me about your experience. And I don't have to immediately say, like, oh, I get it. No, just let me listen, let me hear, let me, you know, just be a pair of ears. So that's my personal thing.
Yeah. What words of wisdom would you say to a high school aged LGBTQ identifying person if they have experienced struggle, bullying, or something similar to the storyline of the prom?
I think the most important thing is to find your people, find your tribe. I know that's a buzzword, but they're out there. They are out there. And I know it can feel isolating, but I promise you there are people out there that are going to love you and think you're amazing. And it might seem like you can't find them yet, but I know that they're out there, and there's a world. If you don't see them yet, they're coming.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Has social media helped in that regard?
To me, I mean, I'm an old man, so I don't know that much about social media, but I do think it has at least helped us connect with fans of the show or people that the show has touched, or, I think it does. I mean, it's obviously got its downsides as well, but as far as I'm concerned, as far as the prom goes, it's been really wonderful to sort of be able to hear these messages and respond and sort of, help in any encouragement that we can.
Just maybe off the record, curious, has the show played anywhere where it received a great deal of protest?
Oddly enough, there have been a few individuals. There's never been a backlash. There have been
That's great to hear.
There was a high school production where one man was very upset about it. And they stood strong. Nothing changed. It was, and it was great to see everybody. The theater production went ahead. The theater department stood strong. The school board stood strong. And whenever I think of that, I think about, we had a talk back, for every one of those, we had a talk back in Atlanta after one of the shows, and this old white curmudgeon-y man stood up and he said, if I knew what this show was about, I never would have come. But I want to tell you something. I'm glad I came, and I'm glad those two girls got together and found each other. And we were like,
that's amazing.
That is, talk about a, changing hearts and minds.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So, sure, there's always going to be backlash. There was backlash after the Macy's Day Parade kiss. Unfortunately, some of our actresses got some, unkind things, in social media. But, for every few of those, the upside, I think, is much more, which is, a little, glimmer of hope.
No, it's great. I mean, during the course of our two previews, we've had like, maybe a handful of 5, 6, 7 people, leave, but nobody was disrespectful at all. They just said, this is not for me. Whereas on the flip side, there's just been overwhelming response to it and people leaping to their feet. So it's just great.
Well, I just want to say, on or off the record, I think it's amazing that you're doing this show, and I think it's brave that you're doing this show, and I think it's important that you're doing this show. So from me and the rest of the creative team, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for writing it. Our mission statement here is to do art that is about acceptance and hope.
That's great.
And so, we have done a variety of different musicals and plays on a variety of different social causes,
Right.
And we did Scottsboro Boys, we've done Fun Home, we've done Hedwig.
That's amazing.
We've done Tribes, we've done Color Purple. So it is not, we're going to do a world premiere of Tiananmen, which is about Tiananmen Square and the voice for democracy there. So it's not uncommon for us, and it's been slow going, is to sort of try to find that audience, find our audience, and to be very respectful of the challenges and so how we basically handle things like that is, if this is not a show that you want to see, then you can opt out of it for another show. So you can buy a package, you can opt out of it. So it allows the subscriber to really pick and choose what they really want to see. So, but all those shows find their audience, and that's what's been great. Is our ability to produce that kind of work, and allow the other shows that are a bit American in Paris and
Right.
Beautiful and Elf and
Right.
some of your other shows that you've done like Elf, to buffer,
Right.
but for each of them to find their audience. So it's
That's great.
Yeah. Thank you, Chad.
Sure, thank you.